I guess Joash and I are going to do some demonstrations while we go. So, but you don't have to move, but you might have a better view if you do. So I've been asked to share a little bit. This is the health nugget portion, or the health talk. And I've been asked by our health ministries director, Dr. Mazzoni, and Kim and his wife. You know, who here was here yesterday and enjoyed their talk? Okay, excellent. It was. I wasn't actually there because we were still setting up our site with some last minute things, but I heard it was very good, and I'm going to get the PowerPoint, so I get to enjoy it from that perspective. But somebody said they did a lot of ad-libbing, and so the PowerPoint wouldn't help me that much. So, but I know that they're very good presenters, full of information. But they have asked me to share a little bit about hydrotherapy. Who has ever heard of hydrotherapy? Okay, almost everybody. Who has ever actually helped somebody by means of hydrotherapy? Okay, who has ever done hydrotherapy on themselves? Who has ever taken a shower? Wow, not everybody's hands goes up. Okay, maybe you do baths. Maybe you're a bathtub type. But if you just simply take a bath or a shower, that's a form of hydrotherapy. So what is hydrotherapy? It's just water for a therapeutic purpose. And so that can be internal or external. But we're going to speak more specifically, or at least I was asked to speak more from an external context. How we can use water externally to help, augment our health. So, we're going to do two things practically, but before we get into those, we got to lay down some theory. Hydrotherapy is something that I really like. I really like teaching on and even going more in depth in the science of it, but I was asked to make it more practical. But you can't do it without laying some groundwork, with some framework. But the two treatments that I was asked to speak on are the hyperthermia bath. If I say that, how many people know what that is? That's all right if you don't. Okay, several of you. And also the hot foot bath. It's exactly like it sounds. Who's done a hot foot bath before? Several people. Awesome. So a lot of this will be review, and you might even learn some more information about those things. All right, Josh, I don't need those quite yet, but we will soon. So as I said, hydrotherapy is use of water for a therapeutic purpose to aid in the healing process. And one thing I like about hydrotherapy, and God does too in Spirit of Prophecy, is that water is very abundant. You know, there's very few places where people are living where there's not water. I would actually say I don't know if there's any unless they're bringing it in themselves. But water is very abundant. And water is a really a good modality or good way to transfer heat and take away heat because it's got a high heat capacity. That's the ability of heat that it can retain. And then it also has a high ability to transfer that heat or to absorb heat. So it's got a high thermal capacity. So it can, even some houses, even like some thermal houses or what do you call the houses that are built into the earth. Anyway, they have the sun come and heat up that water, and then throughout the night or even the winter months, that heat dissipates. So it has a huge capacity to store heat. And actually, how we measure energy, the calorie and the joule and those things like that, is based on water. So how we get a calorie is the amount of energy it takes to go into a gram of water and change that gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So whatever the amount of energy it takes to put into that calorie or that gram of water, and it changes 1 degree Celsius, that's a calorie. So by definition, that's what a calorie is. So let me just test you real quickly on this. Here's a little bit of math. So if you have 1 gram of water and it's 40 degrees Celsius, let's say, that's pretty warm. Let me drop it down. It's 20 degrees Celsius. Okay, and we want to raise it 1 degree to 21. How many calories do we need to put into that 1 gram of water? Did I lose you? So if we have 1 gram of water, and a calorie is defined by the amount of energy it takes to move 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. So that's just proof of concept and proof that I explained it well. If we have So, and to move it from 20 to 21, 1 gram of water, 20 to 21, how many calories would that be? 1. 1, yeah. So let me just compound the point. If we have 5 grams of water and we want to move that from 22 degrees Celsius to 23, how many calories would that take? 5 calories. So that's the energy there, okay? Now, let me just give you some perspective. Now, if you want to cause that gram of water, to go from a liquid to a gas state, so let's say in Celsius, it's 0 is freezing, 0 and below, and 100 is what? 100 and up is, the gas, right? So if we wanted to take that gram of water and take it from 99 to 100, and assuming that we're at atmospheric pressure, right? We want to take that and go 1 degree up. So we want to go 99 to 100. How many calories would it take? Okay, we would think 1. But actually, it's an immensely larger quantity of energy that it would take. It's actually about, depending on pressures and stuff, but about 530 or even 600 calories. It's in that window. So that's quite a difference. That's a lot more energy to make that go into a gas. Okay, so that's significant, especially when we start applying it to our physiology. Let's go the opposite now. When we want to go from a liquid to a solid. So understand this, when we're taking that liquid, we're actually taking energy out for it to become a solid, right? So we have a gram of water that's at 1 degree Celsius. How much energy do you have to pull out for that to become a solid? I would be impressed if you knew out of the bat, but it's about like 37 calories. So it's not just 1 to 1 like it is here, but when you're changing states, we're really doing a lot. So when you're sweating, the best way that we modulate our temperature is through how we move the blood throughout our body, but also through evaporation. Because we just all heard the numbers, like from going 99 to 100. Well, that's a lot more calories. So when you have moisture on your skin and that's evaporating, a lot of calories are going into that water. A lot of energy. Calorie is just energy. A lot of calories are escaping into the environment. So when you're sweating, now understand this, if you're in the sun, not all that energy is coming from you. It's coming from the sun too. But it's a very effective way to get rid of heat. Okay, so water has a huge capacity to take away heat and to give heat, like hypothermia. What's hypothermia? It's where our temperature starts to drop, and it's especially an issue if it's a little bit cold out, but then you fall into the water and then you get out and there's a breeze. Now all that moisture is going off of your skin so much faster, which can go to hypothermia. So now that we know the incredible capacity of water, so if you were to get inside of a tub of water or something like that, you are actually going to be increasing your temperature quite a bit, because that thermal conduction between the water into your body is very high. The ability for water to conduct energy is very high. And so before we even get further, we have to talk a little bit about metabolism. Metabolism is, what is it? Anybody remember from biology, high school biology? Metabolism, what is the definition? It's like, burning calories. I love that. It's really whatever the cell is, depends on whatever the cell is, but it's whatever the processes that take place within that cell to maintain life. Okay? That's metabolism. We think of it like in dieting worlds and stuff, but at its basic level, whatever that cell is programmed or designed to do, that's what it does. So the intrinsic effect of heat on cells, on biology, is to increase metabolism. Heat increases metabolism. Even we can kind of see that at a basic level with water. When you have water on a pan, water on a hot pan, what begins to happen as the heat starts to get hotter and hotter and the water gets hotter? The molecules start to bounce really back, and then eventually it starts to boil and then turns into a gas, right? And then 212, right? Well, that also happens with our cells. metabolism starts to increase. So our body is working very, very hard. The hotter our body gets, the more work is being done biologically, physiologically, metabolically, I should say, right? And so being warm is a lot of work. And so that's why we have a lot of mechanisms to stay cool and stuff. But this is important because as we're augmenting the temperature, we're doing several things. We're not only increasing metabolism throughout the body, we're also stimulating white blood cells. Anybody hear of white blood cells before? The killer T cells, the macrophages, the neutrophils, all these different white blood cells that have specific purposes. And they're known to kill viruses or kill bacteria or kill pathogens, kill different things, invaders that are coming in. And actually, what happens is if our body registers that and we're sick, right, and there's enough invaders and our body is mounting a response, what does our body naturally do for that? Well, you get a fever sometimes, right? And your temperature starts to increase. Well, that's your body's mechanism to stimulate those white blood cells to be more active, increasing metabolism systemically, but also just the temperature alone creates a thermal toxic environment. So it's toxic to viruses and bacteria. Now I'm going to demonstrate one of the most profound things you can do with water. Probably the single best thing you can do for your health right there. Thank you. Thank you. Drink water. So important. We'll talk about that, but it's not the primary focus. So increasing metabolism. Water can do that because it's such a great way to increase the temperature of the body. Now, what happens in the state of a fever actually is our hypothalamus actually resets the temperature. There's a variety of things that go into that, but our hypothalamus is what regulates the temperature. So our hypothalamus says, all right, normally you're at around 37 degrees Celsius, but arbitrarily we're going to pretend that it's like 35, and all of a sudden you start feeling cold. And so your body starts going, ooh, shivering, right, to generate heat. The muscles start contracting and relaxing, that fusor motor drive, and you start increasing the temperature of your body, thereby increasing metabolism. Well, this fever is incredibly productive. It's incredible. The more and more it gets looked into and more things get revealed, I'll just share a few things. So we just looked at metabolism. Not only is the fever increasing the actual function of the white blood cells, it is actually the call to call out more white blood cells into circulation, right? From the lymph nodes into the bloodstream. And so now it's not only more active, there's not only more quantity, but it's both of those things. I just gave it away. I didn't have a third one to follow it up. But it's all of those things. There's more in circulation and they're metabolically more active. So that's one thing that heat does. Okay, but also there's also another protein called heat shock proteins. Who has heard of heat shock proteins? Yeah. Who has heard of heat shock proteins from me? Okay, the same hands. Heat shock proteins are a phenomenal protein, and you should be aware of now you are. Heat shock proteins are like cellular maintenance cells. Heat shock proteins are the cells that go around, and obviously they're stimulated in heat shock environments. Actually also cold, but they were first kind of discovered in heat, so that's why they got the name heat shock proteins. So whenever the body's in like some sort of heat stress, whether you're exercising or you're in a sauna or you're becoming hyperthermic, or this proteins start to denature, whether it's genetically, like even the amino acids or the structure of the DNA actually starts to break down, or actually the origami shape of the protein starts to break apart. Heat shock proteins will go and either fix the sequence, or they'll fix the structure of them. Profound, amazing, okay? But let me just follow up. So for a protein to function right, it needs to be in the right, amino acid sequence and the right coding. That's true. But also, it needs to be in the right shape. And so if it's not folded quite right, it doesn't function at its best. Maybe it can still get by, but it's not functioning the best. That's called when proteins will start to denature. But these heat shock proteins and also FOXO3 proteins go around and look for things like that, and then they correct it. Or they say, you're too far gone, we're going to recycle you, break you down into your amino acid byproducts, and then make a new amino acid. Just so it turns out that most of the amino acids, actually 70% of the amino acids that you have in your body are recycled. You don't actually get the majority from your diet, which goes into a different lecture. But that's just that one's a free one. It won't be on the test. But heat shock proteins. So can we actually get benefit from these heat shock proteins? Do we need to get extremely warm to stimulate these heat shock proteins? No. If I had my PowerPoint, you actually only need to go, there's several studies that we go through, but it's only a few degrees above your normal body temperature. So if you're 37 degrees Celsius, and you just go, a few degrees above that, like 3 degrees higher, 104 Fahrenheit, that's a good fever. It's a solid fever, but you are well into good activity of heat shock proteins. And they've done all sorts of studies on heat shock proteins and recovery rate within muscle or even tendons of mice and human, and recovery time, especially in sports medicine, and also in other things. And even with Alzheimer's, with helping to correct beta amyloid or clear out beta amyloid plaques and other things. But that'll derail us a little bit too much. Another thing that heat shock proteins do is they'll bind to tumors, benign or cancerous. They've seen this in both, right? And they'll bind to it and cause white blood cells and killer T cells specifically to become cytotoxic, toxic to that cell, to that tumor, right? Cytotoxic they'll start to attack that tumor. So, wow, that's a pretty phenomenal protein. Well, how can we uptick that? Well, we just said just a few degrees above normal body temperature. Well, that's one of the profundities of hydrotherapy, because it's has a wonderful capacity to conduct a lot of heat. Another thing that we're doing, this is probably something you're more familiar with. I'll just say this, FOXO3 proteins are very similar to heat shock proteins, so a lot of the same roles, but a lot more on the anti-aging side of things. But another thing that happens, so I said the intrinsic effect of heat is to what on metabolism? Increase metabolism. So the intrinsic effect of heat cold on metabolism would be? To decrease, absolutely. So when we get cold, when you put your food in the refrigerator, you're decreasing the metabolism of the bacteria that are in that food, so it's preserved a little bit longer. We don't like to think of bacteria in our food, but it's there. And we're just slowing down the process. In a freezer, even more so. And when you put someone's body in a freezer, you slow down the decay rate, and it can last a little bit longer, or stuff like that. So you can increase metabolism and slow it down. Well, that's true with our bodies also. So we can increase metabolism and slow it down. But the exception to the rule, and it's kind of not a true exception, but it's muscle. Muscle, when you get hot, do you really feel like your muscles want to work a lot? No, not so much. I was in Alabama for school for a little bit, and it gets real hot there, and I didn't feel like working when it was really hot. Because there's already so much energy, my body doesn't want to elevate its temperature anymore, and it knows if I do work, well, one of the byproducts of work is, heat. So you're going to have more heat. So I didn't want to do that. But that's the exception, the muscles. The muscles, when they get hot, they actually relax. Okay, this is key. And when it's cold, you got that fusor motor drive. What happens when you're cold? You start to shiver to generate heat. Well, we can do this even here. So when we put our hands in cold water, what happens to the blood vessels? They start to what? Constrict. I think you had the right idea. Constrict. Cold water tightens up the muscles, increases the tone. Okay, and so they constrict. So even around. Okay, and then when we put our hands in hot water, the muscles tend to do what? Relax, right? Just think of hot day in Alabama or even here, right? You just relax. Well, this is hugely important when we relate it to vasculature. So our blood vessels, the muscles surrounding them are smooth muscle. You got three types: smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and skeletal muscle, the muscle that enables you to move. They operate relatively similar. For this purpose, they're the same. And so when you actually put your hands in cold water, let's say you have a bowl of cold water, the blood vessels constrict. So the lumen of the blood vessels, the inside cavity, gets smaller. Therefore, you have less blood volume in that area, within that lumen, or even within the entire hand. It gets pushed back to the heart via the venous return. Okay? But now when you put your hands in the hot water, let's say this one's the hot, ready? Put your hand in the hot water, what happens to those blood vessels? They dilate, vasodilation. Absolutely. So you can use this simple principle to have some profound effects on our physiology. Because why? The Bible even says in Leviticus 17:11 or 11:17, the life of the creature is in the blood. So essential. If we don't have good circulation, we can't have life. We can't have health, let alone life, you know. So, like, for example, you put a tourniquet around your hand, that hand's eventually going to become necrotic and maybe infected. I mean, it's going to die. There's no life to it. What's in the blood that is so important? Tell me. What gets transported in the blood? Oxygen. Nutrients. Antibodies. Yep. Water, protein, what else? Waste, yeah, byproducts, hormones, proteins, cytoproteins, prostaglandins that help to rebuild, you know, tendons and muscle, and everything is actually transported through the blood. So not only, for health, we not only need to have, you know, the raw materials in the blood, good nutrition, we actually have to have good circulation, because if you've got the raw materials there, but you can't get it to your toe, well, that toe is out of luck. And some vascular issues can cause something like that. And we're not going to address that specifically, but we're going to address more big picture, okay? So, circulation is key. Actually, you know, there's a saying, perfect health requires perfect circulation, and that's so true. So, let's get a little bit practical here, and maybe more physiology will come out. But I think a great way to explain some of the principles that we've just went through is actually by starting to demonstrate a hot foot bath. And this has been done before, but say it again? Oh, is that not to me? Okay, could I get a volunteer that can help me with this? Oh, don't all jump at once. Well, his feet can't actually touch the ground, Ashley. So maybe I'm gonna, yeah? Oh, okay, excellent, come on up. Come on down and spin that wheel. No, we don't have a wheel.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Last year or the year before, on one of these health messages, they were talking about how drinking cold ice water actually speeds up metabolism and burns more calories with the weight loss.
Yeah, that could be by way of, you know, reducing your temperature. So it's reducing your temperature, and your body actually needs to maintain a certain temperature, so you're going to get that. So, and there's also, so actually there is something. People that live in colder climates have higher levels of white, brown fat, okay? You've heard of yellow fat, and then maybe you've heard of brown fat. Higher levels of brown fat, okay, yellow fat is just fat essentially, just fat. Yes, Josh? Yes, you can. Can you, you sit right over there? I'll call you up when I need you. Brown fat has higher concentrations of iron in it and mitochondria. Yellow fat really doesn't have anything in it for you except for storage, for calories. But those who live in colder climates have higher levels of brown fat because what they think and what they've seen, the conclusion is this: it's because they are needing to burn more energy, produce more calories, burn more energy so they can stay warm. They have more mitochondria even within those fat cells. So those fat cells are actually burning energy to stay warm. I can break that down some more. But even you can increase your brown fat, you can turn your yellow fat into brown fat by doing cold exposure, even cold plunges or hot and cold treatments. You can force yourself to produce more mitochondria. Mitochondrial biogenesis is what they call it, just by exposing yourself to cold, or better way, just exercise. Your body's going to see that, hey, I don't have the amount of mitochondria to be able to sustain what this guy wants to do for activity. activity, so we need to create more mitochondria so we can continue to have energy. That's how you can get more energy in your life too, by exercising. Sounds counterintuitive, but it's true.
Somebody who's really big into cold showers.
Yes.
I could tell you several more stories about what things that he does.
I'd like to hear it, but maybe after. Unless, yeah, it's really neat. It's got a lot of profound effects on your physiology. But so, what I'd like to explain, so what we're going to do is there's a couple of things you can do for a hot foot bath, reasons why you would want to do one. Like, let's say, for example, my sister here, she has a headache, there's a couple different types of headache, but we're going to say a pressure headache. And what we want to do, that pressure is stemming from, it's a heat, like a lot of blood in the brain, okay, or in the intracranial area, and that's where the pressure is coming from, okay. And actually, I'll just tell you, there's a couple. I forget the name of the other, but the other one's a tension headache. Obviously, it's the muscle, like your scalene muscles, your what do you call these, trapezius muscles. This is just so tight, or your, oh man, the scalenes, and what's the one that comes right up here? I forget, but the scalenes are on the side. But they attach to your aponeurosis, this tissue, and then your frontalis muscle, and it's just tight all on the brain. That's called a tension headache. But the more common one is a pressure headache. And how we can help that is simply by putting the feet in hot water. You have a fixed amount of blood in your body, so if you dilate the pipes on one end, well, some of the fluid's going to be pulled away from there. Now, I've never even heard of a situation where you pull all the blood from the brain where the person faints. So don't be concerned that, oh, am I pulling too much blood away from the brain? No, the body knows what it's doing. So what I would simply do for a headache, and we can just even do it with your boots on. All right, you got this big bowl here. Pick your feet up, nice, and you got hot water, and that's all you really have to do for a headache, a pressure headache.
Oh, it feels
put the
better
feet,
already.
take the boots off, and maybe the socks. Obviously, this is just a dry demonstration for sake of ease. Okay, so imagine those things aren't the case. But we're increasing, we're dilating the blood vessels at the feet and drawing the blood away from the head, reducing that intracranial pressure. Have anybody ever had a headache where it's just like, oh, the pressure, it's just so, and you feel your pulse pounding in there? Well, the most common type of headache is a pressure headache. Now, the next most common is a tension headache. And that's, the tight trapezius muscles up here, right? Well, what did we say? What does heat do on muscle? It actually relaxes the muscle. It relaxes the fascia. Actually, muscle and fascia are what we call thixotropic, which means they start to become more elastic when heat is applied to them, or when actually energy is applied to them, whether mechanical or thermal. So we can massage or reduce these trapezius muscles, stretch, or we can apply like a fomentation, a hot towel or a hot pack over these muscles. And you've probably done this intuitively, just to relax those muscles. And that's going to relax the tension that, on the aponeurosis, and just relax the tension that's compressing, okay? So those are two very simple, really not invasive therapies. And the water is, what she can tolerate for heat. Now, there are some contraindications which we'll get into, but they're not absolute. There's very few absolute contraindications. It's things just to be aware of, and you might need to change it. But some things that I would be thinking of are like something like if she has vascular issues, vascular disease, or something like diabetic neuropathy, which is a type of vascular issue. The issue there is with diabetic neuropathy is she's not able to sense the temperature very well. She's not able to feel very well because the lack of blood flow due to the insulin and the high levels of glucose on the blood vessels has caused a lot of inflammation and has decreased the blood flow circulation to those nerves, and those nerves have actually started to die. Okay, so she can't actually feel very well. And also, this is the case with other vascular issues. They can't modulate, or their vascular compliance has become less. And basically, vascular compliance is the ability for the blood vessel to stretch and to constrict. So that mobility is lost. So normally you can do this much. Well, someone with vascular disease maybe might not be able to do anything, or they might just be doing this. And so one of the biggest ways that our body modulates temperature is through our circulation. You think of an elephant, right? An elephant's really hot in the summer. It opens up, it vasodilates all the blood vessels in the ears and flaps their ears. And it takes the heat from the core to the ears and lets that heat off. Well, we do a similar thing, and even with our ears, even her ears are a little red. But fortunately, her ears are not as large of as an elephant. But unfortunately, she doesn't have that capacity to modulate the temperature. So, but if someone has vascular issues, they can't take the heat away from their feet like somebody else can. So that tissue might get overheated. But you would just do a lower temperature. And you can actually work to get that vascular compliance back by incrementally increasing the temperature and decreasing the temperature. Doing that, stretching those blood vessels. Just like it's important to stretch our skeletal muscle, we got to stretch our vascular muscle. Okay, so that's what I would do. I would usually do that for like 20 minutes, and the headache is greatly enhanced. Even before then, it's or decreased. Yeah, she's enhanced. Yep. Yes, and so that's that. Any questions on that particular aspect? Another thing you could do is just apply a nice little cold compress, a wet cloth in some ice water to the head. Okay, just speed up the process. Okay, but moving on from this simple hot foot bath to like a more treatment for more like an infection, an infectious disease, or somebody that already is having a fever, or they're combating some kind of bacterial infection or viral infection systemically. What we can do is turn this into kind of increasing the temperature treatment. So all we do, because remember, what does temperature do? When we increase the temperature of the body, what starts to happen? What are some of the mechanisms that take place? Killer T cells, white blood cells are enhanced. What else? What's the intrinsic effect? Metabolism increases. So all the other beneficial things are taking place. Heat shock proteins, FOXO3 proteins. And let me tell you this, viruses and bacteria are actually inherently weaker than the cells that are actually supposed to be there. So that's why, I'm not going to say that, but just viruses and bacteria are a little bit weaker. Actually, quite a bit, especially with viruses. Bacteria are a little bit more thermal resistant. Viruses are way more susceptible to temperature. So just by doing this, we can elevate the temperature. What I would do if I'm wanting to help combat some kind of infectious disease, is what I would do is, there's a couple things. I'd put this shower curtain around her, because now I'm wanting to keep that heat that I'm putting her on. So can I wrap this around you? Okay, so we're going to wrap this around her, and there's some that water is nice and warm. Okay, and I'm going to snuggle her in right here, and there we go. And even I like to enclose this so the steam from the hot foot bath is going in. Now we take it one step further. You can put a shower curtain around this and really retain that heat. And then on top of that, you can take a nice wool blanket like we have here and surround her this way. She's going to get warm just, without her feet in hot water. But what we're doing is creating that thermal toxic environment, increasing white blood cells, increasing the ability, not only calling more white blood cells into circulation, but increasing their activity. So a lot of good things happening here. So not only after we're doing this, I'd be also adding some more hot water, like every 10 minutes or so, up to her tolerance, always talking with her. And then I'd also be giving her lots of water, because, she's sweating, right? This is a very warm environment. Not in and of itself it would be warm, but with the hot foot bath especially, giving her lots of water, definitely with a straw, because it would be just cumbersome to do it with a cup, it's by experience, and keeping her head cool. Now, if this treatment is going to become a little bit more intense, like we're really elevating that temperature, something that you might consider doing is doing two things. Checking her temperature, because we don't want her temperature to get above around really like 104. It's not necessary. 102 is a good, oh, thank you. Yep, and you want to make sure you always have your reflex hammer on you. Thank you, Joash. You don't want that temperature to get too high because actually our brain cells are a little bit more sensitive, those neuronal sites, but our other cells, our rest of the body are quite a bit more robust. But the brain cells especially, they tend to start degenerating, desaturating at around, oh, this is a mercury one, at around 106 degrees Fahrenheit. So we don't want to go anywhere close to that. We want to stay clear of that. So 102 is actually, above 102 they don't actually find much more activity from a white blood cell standpoint. That's about like you start maxing out. There are some institutes in Europe and in other countries that'll actually, when they have people monitored with electroencephalogram and EKG and other things to monitor the temperature inside the brain, that'll go like right up to 105, 106, you know, really high temperatures. But I just stay clear of it because the amount of benefit that you get from that is marginal. So I'd be wanting to check that temperature if I'm getting anywhere close to that. And this is a great treatment for really kind of knocking off a viral infection or bacterial infection. We're stimulating all the body's mechanisms to defeat that bacteria or virus or whatever pathogen that's coming in. So that would be the hot foot bath. So we saw it at 2 levels, one to help with a headache and just to relax and from that standpoint, but then also to combat a more serious infection. And to be honest, you can do this even right here while we're camping if somebody had an issue. Keep your stethoscope on hand too. Okay, Josh, I think I'm all set as far as tools.
Would that work for a UTI?
So there's other treatments that would be more beneficial for a urinary tract infection, but this will definitely help with the infection. But there's better things that you can do, but this would not hurt that kind of infection. Well, let's answer the questions with the remainder time. I want to make sure I get to the next thing that I was asked to cover here. So that was that. All right, so now let's say you want to have a more intensive treatment towards some kind of viral or bacterial activity. This is actually probably the most effective treatment that you can do for a bacteria or a virus. So I'm going to, let me explain how I would finish this treatment off. So I would take these things off, make sure she's well hydrated, right? Take this off. This would be sweaty, by the way. And even if the guy was a smoker, I've seen this a lot of times, and this is a white sheet, it would actually be like yellow or even stained because the nicotine or other products coming out are going into the sheet. So be prepared for that, but it's a great detox because you're doing an incredible amount of sweating because all this heat from the hot foot bath is not only heating your core, but it's just a very moist, hot environment. So it's essentially like a sauna in there. But it's actually even better than a sauna to an extent because you can last longer because your head is not in the heat. You can keep the head cool. So you can actually get the body at a higher temperature. I'm not docking saunas. I love saunas. They're very effective, very good treatment. But that's one thing that this has an advantage over. You can go longer, you can last longer, and you can go warmer because you can keep the head cooler. Okay, awesome. Let's give a round of applause for our volunteer. Excellent. All right. Well, for this next one, this quick one, it goes heavily on very similar principles, but it's a bath. So I need another volunteer. Josh, you want to be my volunteer? Okay. All right. So we're going to make a bathtub real quick. This is going to be our bathtub. Fortunately, we don't need a big bathtub because we don't have a big patient. But this is our bathtub is going to be purple, right? Nice purple porcelain bathtub. Okay, and this is going to be a cross section of a bathtub. So it's open. Josh, you want to lay down right here? Awesome. So let's say his head is out of the water, he's up against the back of the tub, right? And what we're doing here is we're increasing the basal temperature of the body, systemically the temperature. We're elevating that temperature. And what is happening when we elevate the temperature? We are increasing, what's the intrinsic effect of heat? Relaxing muscles, yep, that's really good, nice, relaxing, yep. But intrinsic effect is increased metabolism of everything, but especially what? White blood cells, neutrophils, killer T cells, all those beneficial things. And even if we get it high enough, it's actually on a spectrum. Even the heat shock proteins, which are really good at identifying who's friend and who's foe. So that's really powerful. But also, we're creating just simply a thermal toxic environment. You know, remember, are our cells healthier than the virus? Or are bacteria stronger than our cells? No, our cells are stronger, right? But to put it very basically, that's kind of like how chemo works. It, you know, subject the whole body to a little bit of this is very, very basic, right? Like explanation. But subject the whole body to a toxin, and the weak ones die, but the strong ones survive. But in this case, we can just subject the whole body to a toxin, and the strong ones even work better and survive, and the weak ones just die. So it's without any bad side effects. Don't read more into that than you should. So what we're doing here on a more intensive scale is we're increasing the temperature at a greater rate, right? His whole body, instead of just his feet are in the bath, the whole body's in the bath. So imagine his head's out of the water. He would not be drowning, right? But his whole body's in the water. And before I do that, I'd want to check the temperature of the water. And the temperature is going to be around, you know, it's going to vary based on what the individual can tolerate. But like maybe in between 107 to, can you get me supplies too? Also bring things up here, maybe a table or just a chair and stuff. The temperature is probably going to be around between 105 and 110 to start with, depending on what they can tolerate. And a couple things that I'm going to be doing, even before I start, it just depends how involved the treatment is and what it is. But something I might do is check the blood pressure so that I know what their standard is, what their normal is. I'd also check his oxygen saturation so I know what his normal is, and I know what to expect. Another thing I would do is check his pulse rate. You can do a couple of those things right here with like a oxygen saturation meter, peak flow meter. No, not peak flow meter. What do you call this thing? Pulse oximeter. Thank you. Peak flow meters. Measure the obstruction within the lungs. Okay, so those are all the things that I would want to do to get a baseline, okay? And then I would write that down. But here, and I would check it around every 10 minutes. I want to get an idea of how his body is responding to the treatment. But your most important measurement that you would be doing is what? His temperature, because we don't want his temperature to get above, his oral temperature to get above what? Yeah, I'm fine with 104 too, but 102 is perfectly good, and it's all on a spectrum. It's incremental. Yes?
One has to be really careful about the temperature with elderly and young. People
Very good point.
passed out at the
Yep.
temperature.
Absolutely. So our model here is a young child. So even any medical professional will tell you children are a whole different species when it comes to health. It seems they respond differently, and one of the reasons for our perspective for hydrotherapy is there's not a lot of mass here, not a lot of tissue, so their body temperature can fluctuate very quickly. It'll get hot very quickly and it'll cool down very quickly. So those are things to be familiar with or to be aware of. So you could still do some hydrotherapy, but you want to be very cautious, especially with kids. But let's move forward thinking that this is an adult primarily, okay? So I won't go through all the considerations of a kid unless a question is asked. Okay, so say it again. Yep. So we just want to be very gentle with the heat if it was a child. Be very aware of that and know that it can shoot up very quickly. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing with as I'm checking throughout the treatment every 10 minutes or so, I'm checking the pulse rate. What I'm looking for is I don't really want to go above 140. Above 140. 140 is all right, but I don't want a heart rate really above that, depending on the condition. But what you would do if that did happen is you'd have an ice bag. You could even have a towel that's full of ice, and then you kind of ball it up like this. You know what I'm saying right here? And then you take that ball of ice and you put it right over their heart. And I'm telling you that brings down the pulse rate very, very quickly. And you could also reduce the temperature in the water or reduce the level, and that'll bring down the pulse rate immediately. And I even have some people that I'll do this preemptively, put it right over the heart, and it actually, slows the heart rate down, and it never even gets to a dangerous level, or not a dangerous, but even a remotely, close to that. And so we're able to do a longer and more intense treatment because of that. And so I want to be checking the temperature and the pulse rate. That's my two things that I really want to know. And so once we're at 102, okay, and another thing that we're doing throughout the treatment is we want to keep the head cool. Just like Leia demonstrated right there, you take a cold washcloth that's in some ice water, put that right over the head, and that'll help to keep the head cool and also help them to be able to last a little longer throughout the treatment. So you take that out, put it back into your cold, wring it out, wipe their forehead. Feels very nice. And the ability to which, or the extent to which you can keep the head cool and keep this part comfortable, you'll be able to have this treatment go longer. So if you can keep the head cool, keep them well hydrated. Leia, can you give him some water? Very good. And you want to keep them very hydrated. Now, something to consider if you're checking the temperature throughout the treatment is you give the water right after you check the temperature, and if they can, wait until they check their temperature the next 10 minutes. And you want to document this, write this stuff down if you're going to be doing continued treatments, just so you have a reference to look back on how they're doing. Oh yeah, because you put that water in the mouth, then you're going to go ahead and check the oral temperature. That's going to be thrown off by the room temperature water that they just drank. So again, let's just think physiologically what we're doing to the body in the hot foot bath where we were elevating the temperature, and in this treatment. So what are some of the things taking place? Just tell me, anybody, from what you know. So we're doing what to the body when we put the hot foot bath and the hyperthermia bath? Increased metabolism, which does, it increases the metabolism of white blood cells. It also calls those white blood cells out from the army barracks or the lymph nodes. Okay, what else is happening? Yeah, you're sweating a lot more, like I am right now, and I'm not even doing hydrotherapy, but you're sweating a lot. And so they actually say a 3-hour hyperthermia bath is the equivalent metabolically of running a marathon. That's a lot of exertion. So this is not an easy treatment metabolically, or calorically rather. So also we're instigating those heat shock proteins, but also what does heat do to the muscles? It relaxes them. And what's that term that we call when it's to smooth muscles in your vasculature? Vasodilation. There we go. Vasodilation. And what's the opposite of vasodilation? Vasoconstriction. And so one of the things that does vasodilation is it stretches those smooth muscles. And actually, good, healthy muscles need to be flexible. And actually, vascular compliance, a loss in vascular compliance means a rise in blood pressure. So the more vascular gymnastics we can do to those smooth muscles, the more stretching we can do to those, the better the blood pressure, or the healthier the blood pressure we're going to have. So if you're somebody if you know somebody that's struggling with hypertension, there's a lot of things you can do from a dietary front, from an exercise standpoint, but also even to affect, even from a hydrotherapy standpoint. Very effectively stretch that vasculature by going into a warm bath, and that'll dilate the blood vessels from there. I can answer more questions, but from that standpoint, and those are the two things that we were asked to talk about. Any questions on them? Or Ashley, you've got a comment?
Well, did Sydney want to share a question?
Oh, Sydney, do you want to share some experiences that you've had real quick, and or you're good? You've got your hands full.
Well, I can share just
Yeah, come on up.
that I think is important. You were talking about how important it was for people to keep a record.
Maybe just hold off on that real quick. Is this one working?
Does this one work? I don't know if it's working, but that's okay. So you were talking about how, there I am. You were talking about how important it was to keep a record of all of these vital signs that you're tracking. The temperature, the heart rate, the pulse ox, right? And I had an experience with somebody that I was working with where the fact that I kept detailed every 10 minutes those vital signs, we were able to identify when she started having some serious pulmonary issues that was outside of what was normal for her during the hydrotherapy treatments. And because of that, that was able to give her other providers a lot more information that was useful for them in terms of being able to help her. And so the fact that I knew, well, she usually drops, her oxygen usually drops once at this point when she gets to about 102 degrees, but then she bounces right back. And then the next treatment we did, she didn't bounce back quite as quickly. And then we were able to see, we were able to look back in the notes and say, this is where the pattern changed. And that was really, really helpful. And if I hadn't kept all of those records, that would have been information that we would not have had, and it would have made her treatment a little bit more difficult. And so I really encourage you, it's for your benefit as well.
As the patient.
And the patient, yes, thank you. But it gives you confidence in knowing that this person is okay because this is normal for them. But it also will benefit the patient if something does come up, that you can help them a little bit more.
And that problem was outside of hydrotherapy. It wasn't.
That problem was not related to hydrotherapy at all.
It just revealed it.
Yeah.
Neat. Oh, very good. So, any other quick questions before we close up? Yes.
In all that you're describing it, giving the hot foot bath and getting the body temperature raised, ward off, fight off whatever the body's fighting.
Yep.
Yeah. Why do we also teach, the hot and the cold at the same time? When you're doing nothing that is cold there, we also discuss about when you're in the shower, hot and then cold, hot and then cold. Yet we're not doing anything cold here. Why is that?
Well, because I forgot to mention it, to be honest. So very good, very perceptive. When we're doing the hot foot bath, at the end of that hot foot bath, even for the headache version, when you're trying to address that pressure headache, you don't end on cold there, because we want to leave those dilated to leave the pressure, and you can allow them to sit a little longer so that there's no orthostatic hypotension. They don't faint when they stand back up, right? Oh, but when we do when we're trying to elevate the temperature and we've got all the blankets around them, on that one, it's helpful to end with cold there. Just because we've really dilated those blood vessels, we want to return the tone back, and so, and it helps to, just redistribute the blood a little bit. But for the hot foot bath, just for 20 minutes, you can just leave that and not end with cold. But with the hot foot bath, to elevate the temperature with all the blankets, you're keeping the head cool, and you end with cold there. Now with the hyperthermia bath, you also can, after you've done the hyperthermia bath for an hour and a half, depending on how much they can do, maybe just sustaining that 102 temperature for 20 minutes. You want to end with cold, get their body temperature back down so that when they do stand up, they don't faint. And that's a consideration, and you want to be aware of that. Have your hands around them. This all depends how long you're actually in the treatment. Sometimes it can really play a toll on them, and they're very exhausted because, remember, metabolically, think of all the things that are happening, right? Marathon, 3 hours, right? There's a lot of energy that's being expended, so they could be exhausted, especially like my sister over there mentioned. If they're older, definitely a little less vitality. So you can end on cold there, but be careful not to drop their temperature, because even while they're resting, their temperature is a little bit more elevated than their normal. And so there's definitely treatment, therapeutic effects happening while they rest, arguably even more. So end on cold there, but don't chill them. You're mainly just making them a little bit more, dropping their temperature a little bit so that they've got more tone to their vasculature and they don't faint when they stand up. Yes?
So they would be in the hot bath for quite a while, and then you just bring them down slowly with a cool temperature.
Yep.
Okay. So what is it then with the extreme though, when we're
hot and cold? Yeah. So that we kind of run out of time, and I'm happy to talk about that but I'll just touch on it very briefly. The hot and cold. Well, has anybody ever done hot and cold in the morning? Yeah, right after you do hot and cold, do you feel like going back to bed, or do you feel awake? You feel awake, yes. A lot of things are being, neurotransmitters are being induced at that moment, and you're increasing your white blood cell activity. So that's something, it really increases white blood cell circulation within the blood. So if you're coming down with something or have some sort of infection, hot and cold showers increase white blood cell activity phenomenally. But also they do a number of other things, like they turn yellow fat into brown fat, depending on the continuous effect of them. And other things too that we can talk about. But that is definitely a good immune system stimulant. In my experience, you're not really going to be like combating a full-out infection with hot and cold. That's more of a maintenance or a preemptive therapy in my experience. Maybe somebody here is a little bit more experience with that particular, but it's more of a prevention, or you feel like you're coming down. Once you have some sort of infection, this is the ideal, or something where you can elevate the temperature, whether that's a sauna, whether that's, you know, a hot foot bath, whether that's infrared, whether that's, you know, just elevating the temperature. And it turns out moist heat is best. So even a wet sauna, if you're not primarily doing it for detox, for sweating, a wet sauna is going to actually conduct more thermal heat into your body. And I mean, even a bath's going to be even better. Yeah, another question.
Hot and cold, is it, how many times did you have to do that? Can you just do it once, take a hot shower, and then take a cold shower? Or do you have to do it multiple?
Yeah, so the question was, how many times do you have to do that hot and cold to get a benefit? It's, you know, it's a dose dependent, I guess. You know, it depends how many contrasts you do. So from what the literature is saying, and I'll bet there's a maximum point, but nobody's brought it to that I'm aware of. But the more you do the contrast, the more the effect. Now, I'm sure that's not infinite, but nobody's brought it to a point where it starts to say a loss that I'm aware of. The literature, I haven't seen that. So, but we typically say, you know, at least 5 to 7 exchanges. So hot, cold, 1, hot, cold, 2, hot, cold. And that's, for that exchange, we would go 30 seconds, well, hot, 3 minutes hot, and then 30 seconds cold. Or it's a science and an art. So if you want to go, you know, over 3 minutes, a little over 3 minutes, and then a little over 30 seconds cold, that's fine. Yes, okay, 2 more questions, maybe 3. Okay.
I heard you mention about children to be very careful.
Yep.
And I always get this. Children do get sick.
Yep.
And they need to be served.
Yep.
And we do have to be wise, though.
Mm-hmm.
However, we tend to not treat our children,
mm-hmm.
and we take them to the... Now, I worked in the Mennonite community,
mm-hmm.
and, you know, they're not big. But,
mm-hmm.
I mean, with the children, again, I didn't take a medical missionary class, but again, it's the Lord leads you, and
yeah.
we need to start treating our children.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you.
Absolutely.
We need to learn, because as fathers and mothers,
mm-hmm.
we don't know. Counsel says you're the physician,
mm-hmm.
and you're the nurse. So we just tend to push our children to the system. I'm just being honest. Mm-hmm. And we tend to treat the older ones,
yeah.
but forget.
Well, let me address that. I think there's definitely counsel. We need to be wise. And what their body is doing, their body themselves mounts a fever response. And that fever response is a very good thing. And oftentimes what happens, because there's such a fear that temperature might get too high very quickly, like it might go above 106, and then start having neuronal problems, you know, even seizures, yeah, that will just give antipyretics to slow it down. But really, I think it's due to a lot of lack of information and a lack of skill. If we can just control that and put ice on the head, keep the head cool, and allow the body to do what it's designed to do. And even sometimes we can create an artificial fever, in the case what we would be doing here with the hot foot bath and the blankets, or a hyperthermia bath, hyper increasing thermia temperature bath. So I think you're very wise to think that we should become knowledgeable at using these therapies. All right, let's close with that comment or question.
I took a hydrotherapy class with Charles Thomas
Okay.
years ago, and he reinforced when you're doing hot and cold showers, he suggested a three cycle max. Just a thought. And I think the big concern with kids is they're not necessarily as tuned into their temperature, and you can get hyperthermia. And of course, as you mentioned, seizures are a real concern. And so, you know, I think it's, well, elderly as well. You know, elderly folks are not as tuned in either. And, you know, I've had people pass out on me doing hot baths. And so it's, one has to be really on top of this.
Yep.
Anyway, just a thought.
I'd like to address those. Very good. So one way you want to be monitoring your signs, your symptoms, and everything that you can. So one of the best things to have is an oral thermometer. That gives you a good idea of what's happening as far as the temperature. So with a child, maybe check it more frequently. But that gives you a good idea of the direction they're going, their temperature and stuff. And one more thing, just to show the capacity that we had. I had one individual that was fainting. While he was eating his meal, he just fainted. His blood pressure dropped very low, and he incrementally just went out of it. And somebody called me, and I went over. Oh, okay, his blood pressure is very low. I checked it, saw his symptoms. And so I put his feet in cold water. And it was like immediately he started to come back. It was really neat to watch. He slurred speech and everything. Like it was really thinking even almost something else. And he just started, he started coming back. His eyes started to open. He started to be able to talk. He started, everything that happened the other way just reversed. And then he was back to normal. And we were checking his blood pressure throughout it. And so in a matter of like 15 minutes, he was back to normal. So his blood pressure dropped, and we were able to get it back. And same thing, if the blood pressure is super high, you can help to drop that by doing the opposite. So water impacts the body phenomenally. It's actually probably the single, hydrotherapy probably has the single most effects on physiology, most mechanisms being stimulated than maybe any other treatment, with the exception being maybe exercise. And the reason why hydrotherapy is so beneficial largely is because it mimics almost all the effects of exercise, with the exception of, you know, very few exceptions, such as the compounding on the bones, stimulating the osteoblastic activity and other things. But very powerful, and we'd be well to become more familiar and actually practice more hydrotherapy, so we can be of better service to those around us, especially in these times that are coming ahead. So maybe I'll close with a word of prayer, and I'm happy to address comments after also, and learn from you guys too. So let's go ahead and close with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for these bodies that you've given us. We truly are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we just want to learn how to be better vessels and help other vessels to be healthier and to come into a deeper, stronger relationship with you. One of the things I love about, you know, your remedies is that they often take time and personal interactions with people, and that grows relationships, and that's really what you care about most, relationship between each other and relationship with you. So help us to remember that and to truly be servant of man and a friend of God. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. Yes.